therapist. Boy, we're in need of that these days. It seems like the stress of election and holidays coming up, COVID-19. I mean, there's a lot on plates.
It is.
And people trying to deal with it. But elections do throw a whole new level of stress in.
They do, especially when you're just inundated with media all the time. And I know I'm on the younger side, but I have always said that the two worst things to ever happen to our society were Facebook and the 24-hour news cycle. And I still stand by that. It is just constant. And when they have to fill that 24-hour cycle, that means they have to talk about things all the time, whether real or not, which leaves us stressed out. If you know, I'm sure you know somebody, I know a bunch of somebodies who just watch news all the time. I mean, it's just constantly on. Can you think of people who are like that?
Oh, many people
Yeah.
that I know that are constantly thinking about it, posting about it.
Yes, it's nonstop.
Good luck with all that. I'm more of the, I know what I believe, I know how I'm going to vote.
Mhm.
I'm not going to try to persuade anybody.
The thing about it is that you have to think about the media and the election cycle as if it's cough syrup. You know, small doses every 4 hours. You can check in, that type of thing. But to sit there and to absorb that all day, it's really just not healthy. And I've had veterans who've come in recently. One who, God, he's a hoot, but he is just kind of that good old boy, and good old Oklahoma boy, retired Army. And he was telling me that he was stressed out and anxious, and I said, well, how much news are you watching? And he said, well, I'm watching these 3 shows at 7, 8, and 9 o'clock at night on this channel. And I said, okay, that is way too much. No wonder your blood pressure is up. And I said, you can watch one of those per night. You don't need to be watching all 3 hours worth of those shows per night.
That's crazy. But there's another whole other level. If you share how you feel or how you're voting, then you begin to get the stress of family, friends, associates, everyone else getting into your political business. Either
Yes.
in some cases shunning you, in other cases flat out calling you out, calling you names, and putting you into a category. All
Or trying
because
to
you
talk
said,
you out of your vote.
Yeah.
Yes.
All because of politics.
Yes.
Voting,
And
stress of this whole time.
you know, I've just never understood the inability to have a respectful conversation from the other side. And I have some colleagues who I can do that with. You know, they're very reasonable, and we just know that we're going to agree to disagree. And I still value those relationships. They're really important people in my life. I respect their opinion, even if we don't agree.
Right.
And the whole point is that if we all agree, then there's no point in having an election.
Right, of course.
You know,
everybody's in agreement.
Everybody's
so
in
this
agreement.
Is what we're doing.
But I really would have to say that the important thing that you need to remember is that voting is very much a privilege. It is not a right. And that in other countries, people don't get to vote for who's in political office. They're told who's in political office. And I'll even say that the Iraq 2002 election, I don't know if you remember that at all. I actually remember that. I could tell you exactly where I was. And they said that Saddam Hussein had won the party by like 99.98% of the vote. Well, if you look online, it's just a solid 100% now, which was, a sweeping increase or something, however they phrase it, from the 1995 election where he won by 99.96% of the vote. And this is still Iraq, where they are a republic and they have a voting system and 2-party houses, and yet that's how people are living. So I know people are frustrated, but let me tell you what, America, you are privileged to have the system that we have, and you better appreciate it. Even if you want to complain constantly, it is still 1,000 times better than what other countries have. Do not ever forget that.
Maybe, but it seems like we are becoming the worst part of the election process.
Oh, I think so.
We as people. The process itself is great,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea of voting, having an opinion, and being able to vote, such a sacred right that we have in this country. But yet there's pressure with the freedom of speech, and then labeling and all kinds of other things that it's causing discourse in families and friends and workplaces. It goes on and on. In fact, I know one person who works primarily in an environment where she is the only of one party and everyone else is of another party, and it makes it hostile for her to even talk politics, to where anything at all regarding her candidate or any of that. I mean, it becomes racial slurs and all kinds of other stuff.
Wow,
And that's
how
a
very
lot of stress.
mature. How
Well,
very mature.
I understand, but sometimes you look at our free country and wonder how free we really are.
Well,
are we
oh,
free,
no.
or can we say it,
Oh,
or
that's
are we
the
going to be
problem.
under attack?
That's
in
one of the
some way?
problem is that we as Americans have taken so much advantage of our liberties that we abuse them. You know, the God in America is the God of choice. Has been for decades now. And we can't say that families haven't argued over politics before. Look at the Civil War, you know, houses divided. So it's not that these arguments haven't been there for generations. They have, and I'm sure they've been very polarized before, but the appearance, thanks to social media, is that it's, you know, significantly worse to the nth degree than it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And so, you know, if you cannot, I just have to go back to, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Right.
You know, just be the bigger person, stay quiet for the moment, and then call one of your buddies and vent to them who you don't work with. But
Right.
to think that we are the most polarized we've ever been, I would have to argue that heavily.
So how do you deal with the stress? Here's how I do it. I don't go throw myself into political arguments, number one. I am open to hearing an opposite view. It doesn't make me mad if someone that I know and care about and love or even don't know. It doesn't matter to me. They have a right to their opinion, and I will listen to it if they want me to.
Agreed.
But I'm not going to get to a point where I argue with them over politics.
Well, that's because you're what we'd call a grown-up. And so so you have to remember that not everyone, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but not everyone is as mature as Cliff Castile.
That's right, thank you.
So,
Tell my girlfriend that.
Yeah,
She
I
thinks I'm a
will.
big
I
baby
will.
sometimes.
It'll cost you $5, but I'll tell her. So
Well-
you have to remember that not everyone has the same stance about discussions as you do. They feel attacked. They feel that that they have to be on the defense all the time. And so I would say, one, if we can keep it out of the workplace, keep it out of the workplace. If you can't, be lighthearted about it, and then just try to move on, change the subject.
We're
or whatever.
doing it in the wrong place. The place to
Yeah.
run your mouth or run your opinion is in that voting booth.
Yes.
That's where you do it.
Yes.
That's where it counts.
Absolutely.
Any other place, you might be creating a path of destruction for yourself. You could be damaging relationships. You could be, all kind of damaging your work environment. I mean, you could decrease your future with certain views.
Absolutely.
So why
Absolutely.
go there over politics? And I'll be honest with you about something. I have a party that I agree with, and I tend to vote that party, but I don't always vote the party. Sometimes I vote the man. I'll vote against the party if a certain person. But in my mind, there's it's my decision to make. I don't necessarily need to go and share it with people, and especially rub things and try to convince people that
The other direction.
And here's where
Yeah.
the big misconception is that one group is really any better than the other. That's where the battle constantly is this group is bad, this group is bad, this
And they
people
both think
bad,
they're
this
right.
And here's
Yeah.
the thing, I wouldn't give you a nickel for any of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we're really voting for is the lesser of the evils.
You know, and it's been that way for a long time.
I truly believe that all politicians are corrupt in one way or another. I believe it.
I think there might be some type of mental disorder to have to run for political office, but that's just my personal opinion. But, you can't say, people have said in the last few years, well, I'm just voting against Hillary, or I'm voting against Bush, or whoever it may be. It's been that way for hundreds of years. This is nothing new, because the bottom line is that if you don't have a candidate who you're just in love with, you're going to vote for the one who's the lesser of two evils.
Let me tell you, this kind of hate and stuff that we're experiencing, it is not new.
No,
You go
no.
pre-Civil War. In fact, Booth, who assassinated Lincoln, there was an incident, a few months I believe it was, where Lincoln walked past him and he actually grabbed him. There was a hatred in our country at the time, rivaling what we have now. We're rivaling what they had back then. And I think the incident was played off that Booth had fallen and grabbed the president to try to hold himself up or whatever. But then the truth comes out either weeks or months later when Booth was the assassinator of Lincoln. There's a lot of hate going on. There's a lot of those secret conversations going on. it's not new to us.
No, this is not new. And like I said, it's just all over the internet and all over the media. And I almost wonder, would I have preferred life back when it took news 90 days to get to me? You know, I would go vote in the election. I wouldn't know who won for 6 months, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, it always goes back to me, Dumb and Dumber, when Jim Carrey's character sees the moon landing headline on the wall. I guess it was in the bar.
We landed on the moon.
We landed on the moon?
Yeah. Did you know that was improv?
No,
Yeah,
it wasn't.
yeah, that
I
was
didn't
not
know
written
that.
in. That was improv. But yes,
we
you know,
did it. Yeah,
yes,
it was like
we
30
did
years
it.
later.
Yeah.
There's almost a piece in
ignorance.
In ignorance, yes.
Yes, I would agree with that. And you know, I will be the first to say that I have stopped watching most all of the national news altogether. I watch some local, and I'll be honest, it's really just to watch the weather and if there's a local event, you know, something to keep an eye on there. But other than that, it's just constant. I mean, nonstop.
So tomorrow it comes to a head, and then we're going to have a few days probably of vote counting. We won't probably have a clear winner for a couple of days, if not longer. Could be that way. And so how do you deal with this? You're a licensed therapist. Well, this stress adds on to everything else going on in your life.
Yes,
so.
And it's been a challenging year for people. So one thing I would say is, again, like cough medicine, small doses. You know, and if you can read your news, you're doing so much better. Turn off the television and go read, and find sources that are reliable. If you don't automatically gravitate toward the CNN or the Fox News or whatever it may be, go to something like Politico or the AP. Go straight to the Associated Press, Reuters, those kinds of things. Folks who are legitimately still authentic journalists who don't ram their opinion down your throat either direction.
Which are so hard to find nowadays.
So hard to find, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So I would say be picky about your news source. Just because it's out there doesn't mean that you have to watch it.
Or that it's true.
Or that it's true. But, you know, when you have it on, and maybe I have just gone so far to the opposite of journalism that I don't even want to give them a rating. Like if I have it on during the news, it's going to be either local or it's going to be the repeat local on whatever channel repeats, the newscast that they just had. Simply out of the fact that I do not want to give national news the rating, because by me giving them the rating, that's the positive reinforcement that their show is doing well. And I'm sorry, but their shows are not doing well. And so I'm going to take the extra effort to turn the channel. Turn it off completely if you want. But like I said,
if you're focused somewhere else.
Go read the news. One thing that I think really helps is go look up your election questions before you walk into the booth. I am one who, learning this at a fairly early age, look up the questions a couple days in advance, and I have an index card that I write everything down on before I even walk into the booth. That way there's no question, I haven't forgotten anything, because some of those little prompts are written in the inverse. They're backwards, and so you think you're voting one way, but it's actually written the opposite way.
Read it carefully.
Yes, read it very carefully. Take the time to make that index card before you go in there on how you want to vote. That way, when you walk in, it's literally arrow, 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 and you're done and you can walk out. The other thing is stop talking politics with your friends.
And talk about fun stuff.
Pick anything else. Pick anything else. World Series, history, whatever you can come up with. Where are we going to go to dinner next week? Those kinds of things, but stay away from it.
I was going to say, or ask you, so after tomorrow and maybe a day or two, or I don't know how long it's going to take to get the results. They said there could be a delay, but if there is, how long after that will people begin to get the stress off? Or will a certain candidate winning increase stress and go into melancholy, depression? It could turn into so much,
I think
right?
we saw that the last cycle, and I think that will probably happen again this cycle to a certain group of people, either direction. Whoever the losers group is going to be is going to have the sore behind, so to speak, at least through Inauguration Day,
right.
If not farther on down the road. I would say, again, the last thing and the very most important thing is that when you walk into that voting booth and when you talk to your children about voting, that you remind them that voting is a privilege. It is a privilege, and that even though there is a lot of drama and chaos right now, that we are still a very blessed country to have the system that we have. And it may not be perfect, but it is a whole lot better than what other countries have. And so when you walk into that voting booth, be grateful to live where you live. Don't ever take that for granted.
appreciate it. You deal with combat veterans all the time. And those
Oh
folks
boy,
that
you want to talk about a riled up group?
have,
And I've had to give the homework of you need to stop watching the news. That's been homework before for a number of them. Either stop watching or titrate down. So that's not abnormal.
Lauren Rich, our guest.